Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What's your company showing?
Well, we are talking a lot about some of the new things that we're launching. Now, we had a very big program of launches at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and now tied to this show, we're making half a dozen new launches to extend what we were talking about there.
Very exciting, I'd love to hear about them.
Sure. So the first thing that we're talking about is the acquisition and retention study that we've done. And that's looking at the trends in the marketplace about what's causing people to stay with networks, what it is that they're looking for. And that's come up with some very interesting findings. This year, 2013, for the first time ever, we will see more smartphones being sold than feature phones. So there's a switch in the market that now smartphones are the dominant factor. And we're already seeing in markets like the United States that actually 2/3 of smartphone users are now what we classify heavy users. And that's a significant increase over last year. But to go with that, more and more people, now 39%, are saying that if they don't get what they want from the network, they'll move. And that means that network operators need to have a really good quality of service to keep their subscribers staying with them.
Makes a lot of sense.
It certainly does. So the launches that we're making are all about improving the quality of the network, reducing the traffic load that isn't necessary on the network. We are, for example, we've completed the story on Wi-Fi so that we can now integrate Wi-Fi as part of a carrier's network, switch traffic onto it when it's available, and switch traffic back off again when it's not. And we can do that under the network control without the end user having to be aware. So where there's trusted Wi-Fi, you can use it now as an integral part of the network with all the tools and techniques that go around it. We're also making some other launches. We are, for example, on 3G networks, perhaps less important for the States, but very important in Europe and the rest of the world. We have a new suite of software capabilities which reduce the signaling load that goes between smartphones and the network, and we can actually reduce that by a factor of 10. So just using some smart software in the network, we can reduce the signaling load on networks by a factor of 10. And that makes a huge difference because smartphones with always-on background applications like email or social media type applications, they need to be permanently connected to the network, and that puts a huge traffic load on the network for signaling, which actually brings the operators no revenues. So if we can reduce that, it's obviously win-win for the operators.
That's one of those stealth problems in the network that isn't talked about often, but I know that one of my analysts on the TMC writing team, he talks about the challenges with signaling all the time and how that really puts a strain on the operators' networks.
It certainly does. It's something that we've been talking about for a couple of years. So we've made great strides in actually reducing that signaling load, using the standards which are in 3GPP, but enabling you to actually take advantage of that, and using some learning within the network to learn about the device, the end user device, the capabilities that it have, and matching the network so that it drives that in the best possible way. So, some smart stuff. It's nothing that the end user has to worry about or has to control. It's something that the network can do and take advantage of the software features. And software is much easier to deploy than more hardware.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. And then if we look at some of the other areas that we're bringing, we are trying to make sure that end users who are using video services get the best possible service as well. And what we're now starting to see is that networks are becoming very, very heavily loaded with video. It's the fastest growing source of data in the networks. So another thing that we're launching as part of this show is something called the Content Optimizer, the Flexi Content Optimizer. And what that's doing is matching the video to the end user device, but also being aware of the congestion or the traffic load in the network. So if a radio network is busy, it can adjust and prioritize the video traffic accordingly. And that means you can actually get up to 50% more users connected to the radio network, able to connect to a video service. Again, incorporating network elements to make the service that end users see far better, far more efficient, and less buffering, at least if you're looking at video. And that's part of our liquid broadband family that we introduced at Barcelona this year.
Very exciting.
It is. I think we're now in a position as a company that riding high, riding proud, and taking this to the next level with some of these announcements that we have.
Now we talked a bit before we got on this interview about network functions virtualization. I was hoping you'd just take a moment to discuss that.
It's one of the fastest developing areas, I think, in terms of where the technology is taking us next. The core network, there are 10, 12 different core network element functions. So what we're doing with our liquid core is having each of those as a software application, which then runs on the same hardware. The early versions is using a standard platform with a blade for each of these applications, and we're now working with either OpenWave or VMware that we can actually virtualize the core platform completely. Initially with COTS ATCA platforms, the commercial off-the-shelf ATCA, and then moving on to standard IT blades. So by putting middleware between the two, you can actually start to have the processing power in the cloud, and then you can use some of the SON capabilities to work out how much capacity you need in the cloud, or how to manage it and keep the functions running, and to balance the load between the various elements that you need in a core network.
So there was something quiet that happened recently that your company was involved with, and I'm not sure that it's made its way up to being an outbound marketing topic, but it's about a bunch of companies coming together to work on getting their OSS APIs to work together. Is that something you're familiar with?
Yes, that's the OSSII, the interface initiative that we, as Nokia Siemens Networks, have worked together with Huawei and Ericsson to be able to take that as a solution to operators. Typically what we've done in multi-vendor networks before is use the operator to act as the intermediary between us and the other network element providers. What we're doing with this agreement is saying that we will have a predefined agreement, a preset of commercial conditions and cross-licensing arrangements with Huawei and Ericsson that means that we can manage in a multi-vendor environment much more effectively and without having to use the operator as a go-between. And that means that we can go to market with off-the-shelf interworking solutions.
Sounds like it's a nice tie-in to the software telco of the future and network functions virtualization.
I'm not sure it's directly linked with network functions virtualization, because that here is about network management. So it's recognizing that typically operators do choose more than one vendor, and this means that we can go to market with the management systems that support whatever type of network operators would choose to have. The functions virtualization is more looking to extend the capabilities of the core network and be as flexible as possible with the capacity that's needed.
So what's next for the company?
More, better and faster.
Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Good talking.